Thank you for being here today. The Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship will come to order. So we have a very important hearing today. I want to first like to turn it to Loretta Sigers-Benton, the Chief Operating Officer for Roxbury Community College, for an introduction. Loretta.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Senator Markey and distinguished witnesses and guests. On behalf of the President, Jonathan Jefferson, Roxbury Community College's Board of Trustees, and our border community, we want to welcome you here to Roxbury Community College today. Thank you for choosing RCC as the site for this important hearing on such a critical role that entrepreneurship plays in the closing racial wealth gap. My name, as he mentioned, is Loretta Sigers-Benton. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the college. I'm also serving as an interim role right now for advancement, so we're also raising money for our college. And I'm honored to represent the college today to share just a few ways that Roxbury Community College is supporting entrepreneurs across our service area. Roxbury Community College is deeply committed to economic mobility, equity, and opportunity. Two of our key initiatives to do this through is our Center for Economic and Social Justice. We call that the CESJ, and the Business Innovation Center, which is our BIC. These initiatives are at the forefront of our work. Today, we provide residents and students with the services, support, and connections to capital necessary for long-term success. Established in 2022, the Center for Economic and Social Justice focuses on preparing students to secure employment and develop their own small businesses in high-growth industries such as green, technology, and healthcare. The CESJ is also leading the implementation of Roxbury's new Learn and Earn model, which will ensure that every student has the opportunity to complete a paid credit-bearing internship before graduating here from Roxbury Community College. This game-changing approach removes the impossible choice many students face between working and staying enrolled here at the college. We're creating a clear and efficient pathway to economic mobility, and I want to extend a special thank you to Senator Markey for securing the CDS funding that allowed RCC to begin transforming the historic David Dudley House into the future home of the Center for Economic and Social Justice. So can I just give him a round of applause? It's because of him we received that funding. We are continuing to raise funds for this capital project and look forward to welcoming you back to the campus for the groundbreaking when this is all complete. The Business Innovation Center, or the BIC as I referred to earlier, supports aspiring entrepreneurs by providing practical knowledge, mentorship, and access to resources. Since opening last year, we have served over 668 individuals, and they have utilized the center. And approximately about 1/3 of that is our own students. And then 2/3 of that are people out in the community. And so we're excited again that we have branched this out, not just to our students, but for those in the community as well. The BIC offers one-on-one mentorship, introductory business planning programs, and informational sessions with key partners to provide them access. And we as I mentioned, provide the access to physical space and technology, sorry about that, essential for success. To maximize the impact, the BIC has built strong partnerships with organizations, including many. I'll just name a few here just in essence of time: the U.S. Small Business Administration, Lawyers for Civil Rights. We connected with Suffolk University SEED program, Boston Main Streets, just to name a few. And we continue to align ourselves with other mission partners. This is what we try to do, is continue to align ourselves with other opportunities that are out there. Through the collaborations, the BIC has delivered a robust series of business-focused workshops and resources on a rolling basis. So this is happening now for both students and community entrepreneurs, where we are opening our doors to teach them how to own their own business through workshops. Roxbury Community College is also proud to serve the Spark Bill, which is fully aligned with the mission and work of the BIC. Together, the CESJ and the BIC will play central roles in implementing Roxbury's 2025 to 2030 strategic goals known as Roxbury 2030. The plan positions the college to lead with clarity, purpose, and impact, focusing transparency, belonging, and institutional accountability. Grounded in the lived experiences of our students, the expertise of our faculty and staff, and the insights of our community and civic partners, the plan reflects both the urgency and the promise of this moment. We look forward to continued collaboration with you, Senator Markey, Representative Presley, and many others that have been there for Roxbury Community College, and every one of you in the room as we implement this plan, measure our success, and expand opportunities for lasting economic mobility. Thank you again for your continued support and joining us here today at Roxbury Community College.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And we're honored to be joined by leaders from the Boston City Council, but we're also joined by a champion on Beacon Hill, a fighter every day for economic equality, for breaking down the barriers to entry into this economic system. And she is joining us right now. Great Senator. Liz Miranda, would you like to say a few words, Liz? Welcome.
Time the senator speaks, I feel like I should put Reverend in front of his name. Do y'all get that feeling as well? I'm happy to be here as the state senator of the 2nd Suffolk District. I see 3 of my city council colleagues. Welcome you. And none of us can do this work without the relationship that we have with both the federal, the state, and local officials and municipalities like Roxbury. I'm not going to be long, but it's actually afternoon, right? I haven't finished my Dunkin' Donuts yet. But as someone who's been born and raised and own a home in Roxbury, it's always an honor to welcome you as partners and as leaders and into this community, especially those who just talk about it, but folks that actually live and work toward equity every day, but they show up and they do the work alongside us. Today, I'm proud to welcome my colleagues and my friend, Ed Markey, back to Roxbury for the Senate Small Business Committee field hearing on the role of entrepreneurship in reducing the racial wealth gap. I know something about that as a former entrepreneur. And I guess you're always an entrepreneur, right? Once you start a business, regardless if you close it, you always be an entrepreneur. And Senator Markey, I just want to thank you. We've been on this road together supporting RCC and a lot of initiatives for the last 8 years that I've been in the legislature. And you've always been present in our neighborhoods. You listen to small businesses and our families, and you show up early and you show up often, which I appreciate. And that consistency really matters when you want that from your leadership. And it's important to ground ourselves in where we actually are, though. We're gathered in a building that exists because the community fought back. More than 50 years ago, Black leaders joined hands with leaders all throughout many communities and fought for an 8-lane highway to not exist in our communities. And there would be no Roxbury Community College if that group of people did not succeed. And because of them, not only are we here, but we're still here. We're still rooted, and we're still building. We stand on these shoulders of all of our ancestors today, and it's our responsibility to fulfill the promises they actually fought for, not just as elected officials, but as people in community as well. So here in Roxbury, we know that talent is everywhere, but the opportunity is not. We have entrepreneurs, we have innovators, small business owners and dreamers on every block. What they need is access to capital. They need contracts, and they need actual real investment. If we are serious about closing the racial wealth gap in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that is actually widening, and the pay gender gap that is actually widening. If we're serious about doing that, we have to be serious about supporting minority and women-owned businesses and creating the pathways to ownership and generational wealth. I want to thank you because today is about solutions, and I'm grateful you chose to hold it right here in my favorite place in the city of Boston. Welcome back to Roxbury, Senator. We're glad you're here, and we're ready to get to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, so much. And we're joined by City Councilors Enrique Pepin, who is sitting right here in the front row, City Councilor Sharon Durkin sitting here in the front row, City Councilor John Fitzgerald sitting right here in the front row, all here front and center trying to build this as a community issue. Would each of you like to get up for 1 minute and say something at the opening? Okay, well, good. Thank you. So thanks to everyone for joining us here today. I'm honored to be holding this field hearing entitled The Role of Entrepreneurship in Reducing the Racial Wealth Gap at RCC because of what this institution stands for: affordable, quality education for everyone. And this is, without question, the key, because education and entrepreneurship go together. It's like peanut butter and jelly. It just, what you need them both to make the sandwich work. And if we're going to deal with these gaps in racial wealth, then it begins with this institution, along with all of the access to capital, which then accompanies people leaving here to go off into the world. Roxbury Community College's Center for Economic and Social Justice and the new Business Innovation Center are breaking down barriers on a daily basis. And these programs offer the education, the skills, the mentorship, opportunities to build wealth through entrepreneurship. The Roxbury Community College has partnered with Jalen Brown, Drew Holiday, Lauren Holiday to launch and support the Boston Creator Incubator and Accelerator. This collaboration supports creators from underinvested communities with the resources and the support which they need in order to thrive. Their work builds on and relies on the research network and the capital that organizations like the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, or BECMA, BDC Capital Corporation, We Are the Funders, and Boston Foundation provide. These witnesses are a shining example of what can happen when a community comes together, collaborates, and centers community needs. That's what this hearing is all about. It's about a whole of community approach, bringing together government, higher education, research institutions, investors, and visionaries. It is only with a combination of these systems and intentional programs and policies that we will harness entrepreneurship's true potential to close the racial wealth gap. For more than a decade, the Federal Reserve of Boston reported that median net worth of Boston's Black neighborhoods was just $8, compared with more than $247,000 for white communities. That's a decade ago. An update to that report is expected later this year. But it doesn't take another report to know that we still have a lot of work to do. The racial wealth gap has widened over generations because of unjust policies that exclude systematically and discriminate against and ultimately restrict people of color from the means to accumulate wealth. This is most evident in the challenges that Black-owned businesses face when trying to get a loan to help their businesses succeed. In Massachusetts, 68% of Black-owned businesses are concerned about access to capital, double that of white-owned businesses. Say that again. Twice as many Black-owned businesses have a problem with access to capital as white-owned businesses. That concern is well-founded. About 2/3 of entrepreneurs use personal or family savings to start a business. That means those without generational wealth start at a disadvantage. In fact, Black-owned businesses are more likely to apply for financing, but twice as likely to be denied as are white businesses. And that is unacceptable. It is our responsibility to support efforts to rectify historical injustices and offer real opportunities. So I've been proud to fight with Senator Warren and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley to secure funding for organizations across the Commonwealth like BECMA and RCC to support their efforts to close the racial wealth gap. Our work is more important than ever. And this administration continues to turn back the clock on progress by dismantling the Minority Business Development Agency, the only federal agency dedicated to helping minority-owned businesses, attempting to shut down community development financial institutions, which largely deliver needed capital to underserved communities, and barring immigrants, including green card holders, refugees, and DACA recipients from receiving Small Business Administration loans. This is not America first. This is hate first. Hate directed at Black and brown communities in our country who are seeking to become a part of this economic engine of growth, which is the envy of the world, but which has always had barriers to entry. And they're only trying to make it more difficult by what they have done just in their first year. So this is not progress. That's only propaganda. That's all we're hearing. And it's not opportunity for all. It's just an oligarchy for the few. We will not go backwards. We must reimagine a brighter and more inclusive future for everyone, one where we actually close the racial wealth gap. This gap isn't just a moral and policy failure. It robs us of our full potential as a society to not have everyone included in this economic opportunity, which we call the United States. That is why I am introducing the Spark Act. So my bill would supercharge the existing infrastructure with new grant dollars for entities like Roxbury Community College and create a new program that provides direct grants to underserved entrepreneurs, direct grants to those entrepreneurs. And that work mirrors the work that the groups here are already doing. That's what we're going to be talking about. The Spark Act would expand their work to reach entrepreneurs shut out from opportunity. This is important because a vision without funding is an hallucination. If we want to have all these barriers broken down, if we want more Black and brown business people to be successful, we have to ensure they have the funding. That's what my bill will do. The Spark Act is just the beginning, and I will continue to fight to reduce the racial wealth gap at the highest levels of government. And while I won't be signing with the Celtics anytime soon, I'm proud to be on a team with Jalen and everyone here today to uplift the next generation of underserved entrepreneurs and work to close the racial wealth gap here in the Commonwealth and across the country. So Jalen's mother, Michelle, who is here on behalf of Jalen today, they work in partnership on these issues, said, "Who you are is measured by the mark you leave on the world. And to truly leave a mark on the world, you have to do the right things and speak out against the wrong things." And today we are not agonizing, we're organizing to do the right things and to speak out against the wrong things. So we thank everyone for being here today. We have an incredible panel of experts who have joined us here today. And I am the senior Democrat on the Small Business Committee for the United States Senate. And with a little bit of luck, I'll be back here in January of next year as the chairman of the Small Business Committee in the United States Senate. And that's what we're going to work towards accomplishing. And then we're putting the Spark Act right at the top of the small business agenda for the country. So I'm pleased to welcome our first panel of witnesses. Ms. Michelle Brown is the president of the Juice Foundation, an organization founded by her son, Jalen Brown, that aims to bridge the opportunity gap for youth in underserved communities. Michelle is also an educator with experience as a professor at Cambridge College and is an activist. She is here today to testify both on her own behalf and on Jalen's behalf as the founder of the Boston Exchange, which provides underserved entrepreneurs with resources, support, and opportunity. for their vision for what they can accomplish. And next, we're going to have Mrs. Lauren Holliday. She and Drew Holliday, the founders of JLH Social Impact Fund, which supports initiatives that focus on equitable outcomes for Black and Brown communities. JLH partners with local organizations and leaders in order to provide the support which they need to be successful, holistic support to minority communities. And Miss Lauren Holliday is also a former professional soccer player, two-time Olympic gold medalist, FIFA Women's World Cup champion, and is a Boston Breakers alum. And she is going to be joining us virtually. And we look forward to hearing, Lauren, from you in just a little bit. And thank you for all that you do. So let's then begin with you, Michelle. Thank you for all of your work. You and your son have helped to create an incredible framework for how we have to move forward much more rapidly. And so without further ado, welcome. And whenever you feel comfortable, please begin.
Ranking member, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As Senator Markey stated, my name is Michelle Brown. I'm the president of the Juice Foundation, which encompasses Boston Exchange and also bridge programming. Jalen, who plays for the Boston Celtics, is the founder of Boston Exchange and also the co-founder of the Boston Creator Accelerator. So I am here today on Jalen's behalf, myself as well, to firsthand talk about why the Spark Act matters. Not from just a policy perspective, but from what I've seen firsthand in the communities that we care about since living here for 10 years. So over the years, I've witnessed minority communities face challenges, not because people weren't talented or hardworking, but because the systems weren't built for us. Jobs disappear, businesses close. Wealth continues to leave our neighborhoods instead of staying and circulating. When Jalen got to Boston, he wanted to do something different, not just a charity or a one-time donation. He wanted to build infrastructure, a platform where people could own, create, and build businesses that last. And that's why he founded Boston Exchange as well, to create pathways for entrepreneurs, artists, and creators to access the resources, networks, and support they need to succeed. He knew that alone wasn't going to be enough. The founders need mentorship. They also need access to capital. They need partners who understand the barriers they're facing and help them to try to navigate through those issues as well. That's why we partnered with Drew and Lauren Holliday, MIT, Harvard Business School, and Suffolk University to create the Boston Creator Accelerator. The beauty of the Boston Creator Accelerator is not just one organization doing everything. It's a big collaboration. MIT brought curriculum and technical expertise. Harvard brought investor and readiness training. Suffolk brought legal support. So Drew and Lauren brought learned experiences and funding and also a national lens on this. Boston Exchange provided the platform and long-term commitment. Together, we support the 10 founders over multiple years, not a quick program, but sustained support. Those founders have also created jobs. They've built real businesses, and they've done it in communities such as Roxbury and Dorchester, communities that don't usually get this kind of investment. What Jalen and I have learned is that real economic power comes from ownership. Not just having a job, but owning the business, owning the building, and owning the block. When communities have those resources to build and capital circulates within the community, instead of extracting it out, that's when you create generational wealth, not just jobs. So, but here's the reality. Most communities don't have the infrastructure to make that happen. Founders are out here grinding. They're out here taking a leap into entrepreneurship because they have to, not because they want to. And we're asking them to do it without the support system and that makes the business succeed. The Spark Act is about changing that. It would fund accelerators and incubators across the country, not just for 6 months, but for 5 years, with the possibility of renewal. So it would require that kind of partnership that we built in Boston, universities, lenders, community organizations, working all together. And it will provide founders with access and capital, not just advice. That's how you turn survival into sustainability, and it's a necessity for ownership. When you invest in people and give them the infrastructure to succeed, it begins not just to be a program, but real sustained support. They build businesses, they create jobs, wealth, opportunity in their own communities. The Spark Act would make that possible nationwide, not just in one city, but everywhere. It is an honor to be included in this historic moment, and we eagerly anticipate stories that the Spark Act will ignite. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Great testimony. And now, remotely, we are going to hear from Lauren Holiday. Welcome, and whenever you feel comfortable, please begin.
Hi, everyone. Miss Michelle, I wish I was there to give you a hug.
That's so sweet. I miss you.
Miss you too. Ranking member, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lauren Holiday. I'm here today to talk about why the Senator Markey Spark Act matters, not just for Boston, but for communities across the country. Over the past several years, through the Drew and Lauren Holiday Social Impact Fund, we've had the privilege of supporting entrepreneurs in cities nationwide: Boston, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, and beyond. What we've learned is this: entrepreneurs don't fail because of the lack of talent. They fail because the systems around them are fragmented. And you're building in underserved communities. Those systems aren't just fragmented, they're often absent entirely. What we've seen work is we didn't start with a theory. We started listening to founders and asking, what do you actually need? The answers were consistent across every city: long-term support and short-term grants. Founders don't need a check that disappears after 6 months. They need partners who commit for years, who are there when revenue is slow, when pivots are necessary, when the work gets hard. Trusted relationships, not transactional. Businesses grow when they're supported the way families support each other, with patience, trust, and genuine investment in their success. Coordination across institutions, not isolated efforts. Not a single organization can provide everything a founder needs. But when universities, lenders, accelerators, and community partners work together, founders don't have to navigate alone. Through our work in Boston, we supported an entrepreneur named Tracy, the founder of Little Cocoa Bean, a children's food business rooted in community and culture. What got her across the finish line wasn't a single grant or program, but all of us together wrapping around her: government partners, philanthropy, institutions, customers, community members, operators, walking the journey with her. That collective support helped Tracy open her newest location at the Boston Children's Museum at the Seaport. And in her own words, she could not have done this without people saying in it with her from start to finish. That's the model we've built through our work through the Boston Creator Accelerator in partnership with Jalen Brown's Boston Exchange, MIT, Harvard Business School, and Suffolk University. And it's the model we've seen work in other cities when the right partners come together. Why this needs to be national is it's not just Boston. In Boston, we received over 2,000 applications for 10 spots. In New Orleans, founders told us the same story: talent everywhere, infrastructure nowhere. In Los Angeles, in Milwaukee, in every city we've worked, the pattern is identical. Entrepreneurs are taking the leap, not because they have an innovative dream, but because they have to feed their families. Traditional employment is disappearing. Industries are restructuring, corporations are moving their workforce offshore, and people are left with no other choice but to bet on themselves, starting businesses out of necessity, not aspiration. But survival without support leads to failure. The Spark Act recognizes that if we want entrepreneurs HIP to be a viable path for everyone, not just those with access to wealth and access to the elite networks and capital, we have to invest in the institutions that can provide that support at scale. Not in one city, everywhere. What the Spark Act gets right is this bill reflects what we've proven works. Multi-year commitments, 5-year funding with the possibility of renewal. That's what allows real relationships to form and businesses to grow sustainability. Required collaboration. The bill mandates partnerships between universities, lenders, accelerators, and community organizations. That coordination is what makes ecosystems function. Place-based design, every community is different. The bill recognizes that solutions have to be rooted locally, led by people who understand the context. Capital paired with support. The financing provision is critical. Founders need more than mentorship. They need resources. This bill provides both. What's at stake, community isn't transactional. It's transformational. When you love your community like family, you don't just write a check and walk away. You build systems that last. The Spark Act is about building those systems nationwide so that every community has access to the infrastructure that makes entrepreneurs possible. Not as a privilege, as a path forward. We've seen what happens when you invest in people and institutions the right way. Businesses grow. Jobs are created, wealth stays local instead of extracting out. The Spark Act would make that possible at a scale we can't achieve alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. If I may, I'd just like to ask a couple of questions. First of all, why did you and Jalen just focus on entrepreneurship? Why is that, from your perspective, the key that you have decided to put the spotlight on?
With being in the community, Jalen saw that same article that you spoke about earlier and wanted to give people, like I said, just not jobs, but the ability to own or to create their own. So with that being said, entrepreneurship was what we talked about and how that would be successful for if they had, continued resources and funding to be able to create their own opportunity.
Yeah. Lauren, what drew you to this one issue, you and Drew?
It actually started during the pandemic when the guys were going to the NBA bubble and I was pregnant with our son. And during the time, like George Floyd had just happened, all of these things just happened, and my husband was having a hard time figuring out why or like what mattered to go back to the bubble to play basketball when there was such a divide in our country, a racial divide. And we were brainstorming, and I asked him what would make it worth it. And not going to the bubble maybe would have made a stand, but it wouldn't have made an impact that we wanted. And so he decided to donate the rest of his salary for that year, $5.3 million, to support Black-owned businesses and Black-owned nonprofits, Black and Brown-owned. And so that is really what inspired us, was just seeing the need during a pandemic, during a time of social unrest, that the Black community was disproportionately affected.
Beautiful. And do you have a story or two that each of you might want to bring to this issue that kind of sticks out in your mind? Someone you met, some opportunity that you really thought should be able to get help but was denied that help. Do you have an example, Michelle?
Well, I have two, but Lauren talked about Little Cocoa Bean, which was one of the, I spoke at when they opened at the Children's Museum, but also the sneaker launch, which was Sydney's project. And we just saw that once that was there with the support, that how it spiked his sales and able to help him gather what he needed, like being able to be a part of the cohort and learn and grow. What we saw what that was doing, and wanted to continue to be able to do that.
Thank you. Yep. Lauren, do you have a story of?
Yeah, I feel like we have so many stories. One that really sticks out to me, I told you about Tracy from Little Cocoa Bean, but a story from Milwaukee, actually, there was a woman that was teaching yoga in inner city schools to make sure that the kids had proper mechanisms to cope with the traumas that were around them and what was happening. And she was trying to open her own studio. And through our JLH, she was able to crowdfund almost or over $100,000, and she has been thriving ever since. And I feel like these stories just continue to happen. Like once the investment is there, they're able to thrive.
No, excellent. So, what's the one message? What if you're going to sum up what your message is, what Jalen's message is, you, Lauren, what you and Drew, what is your message to the community? What is your message to Washington in terms of what you think has to happen to unlock all this potential? Michelle?
Sure. I believe that our vision, like you said, to unlock the potential for Boston Exchange would be to help rebuild what was stripped away. And this would be able to nurture a local economy rooted in innovation, inclusion, culture, and care. So I think with that being the message, that we need the resources regarding to build up the communities again that they were there at one time, or not really, but we want to build those up. So that's, I think, would be our message, is to be able to come together and nurture the local economy.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Lauren, what's your message?
I think the message that my husband and I always say is cause creates community, but contribution creates belonging. And in our communities, we need to contribute so that everyone feels like they belong. And I can use Boston as an example. Us going to Boston and being able to contribute, we still feel like Boston is home. We have created a family with Jalen Brown, with Miss Michelle. We have been able to create a family with our Boston Exchange cohort. And that isn't possible if we didn't actually contribute to that. And so I would say cause creates community, but contribution creates belonging. It is our job to contribute to our communities.
Yeah, well, that's what you're doing. These two families have given us a vision for what is possible, or how we have to focus on the issue, but then work across all segments of the community in order to ensure that we see the progress which we know can happen. Right? It's just a stultification of human potential. And unfortunately, once again, President Trump, over the weekend, in his insulting comments about Barack and Michelle Obama, have demonstrated how hard we have to work in order to overcome that historic bigotry, which has led to this denial of access to the financial capital that unlocks human capital in the Black and brown communities in our country. So just this hearing could not be on a better day than after what we just saw this weekend. It just says we have to work a lot harder, and we have to win this year so that then we can pass the Spark Act and have that funding be made available. So we can't thank you enough for all of the work which the two of you have done. And maybe we could all just give a warm round of thanks to Michelle and to Lauren.
Thank you.
For all of your great work. Thank you so much. And thank
Thank
you for
you.
being here. Now we're going to move to our second panel, and we can hear from them and their comments reinforcing what Ms. Brown and Mrs. Holliday have already laid out for us. While we're waiting for that, I see actually Gladys Vega is here. Gladys Vega is the CEO of La Colaborativa, which is in Chelsea, but it just serves so many other communities in the greater Boston area. And she is here as just an incredible leader, incredible spokesperson for all of those in need, including entrepreneurs, to get access to the capital which they need. And we're also joined by Councillor Minion Culpepper, who has joined us as well. We thank you for joining us today. And would you like to say a word before?
No, I will.
Yeah, would you? Okay.
It's amazing. I didn't think he was going to give me the mic, but I thank Senator Markey for giving me 2 minutes. Senator Markey and I go way back when Ted Kennedy ran for president. That's when I first met Senator Markey. Some of you weren't even born. And so we've been working in the trenches. Remember, he was at the State House and he went to Congress and now he's a senator. And the good news is that we've done some good things together. This is a great hearing because I think it connects with some. I just got off a conference call, and what we talked about for City Council next week, Senator, is we're having Black History Month. And the theme for Black History Month that the City Council has laid out is economic empowerment for our community. And so Senator Markey is always on the right side of issues. When he's not, you can always give him a call, but he stands with us and for us. When I was running this summer, you know who I called? Ed Markey. And let me tell you what he did. He did something. He walked up Nazing Street. That was the first time a United States senator had ever walked up Nazing Street in Roxbury in the history of this Commonwealth. And he knocked on doors and talked to folks. That's the kind of senator he is. He goes into the neighborhoods where you'll never find a senator. So I just want to thank you for inviting me to be with you today. And just give me a call. Just call my name. I'll be there. Thank you, Senator Markey.
Great. Thank you. Again, the Spark Act is, it's a big bill. It's $500,000 per year, per organization for 5 years in a row, guaranteed. And so it's a lot of money per organization, and then you seed it in community after community across the country. Then you can see the difference which it would make. So now I'm excited to introduce our second panel of witnesses. Ms. Renee King is the CEO of We Are the Funders. Ms. King works with Boston Exchange and JLH Social Impact Fund to support minority entrepreneurs in Boston. Her work focuses on providing funding and other long-term support for Black-owned businesses. So welcome, Renee. Whenever you're comfortable, please begin.
Just one moment till the panel start hanging off the edge. I'm just gonna remove this chair, and if everyone wants to scooch down. Get you on the chair.
So whenever you're ready, Ms. Renee King, please begin.
Thank you.
Can you move the microphone in a little bit closer?
How's that? Good?
Beautiful.
Good. Okay. So Senator Markey and team, thank you for the opportunity to testify. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Renee King, and for the last several years, I've worked alongside founders, institutions, community leaders, supporting entrepreneurs who are building businesses because they had innovative ideas and they had to. And the solutions they needed to support them didn't exist around to help them get to the final stage of where they're going. And now also I'll echo the statement that jobs also don't exist too. So a lot of these entrepreneurs, the future of work is entrepreneurship. That's the reality that we are in right now in this economy. And when we see traditional employment disappearing, entire industries restructuring, and millions of like Americans in our communities they're taking this leap into business ownership, not only because, you know, they have an idea, but also out of necessity. We have a problem if we're asking them to jump in without a net, right? We have a huge problem at hand. So and the problem is that we're leaving entire communities without the infrastructure to turn survival into sustainability, without the mentorship, the networks, the capital, the coordination that makes businesses succeed instead of fail. And that result isn't just the inequity that we see in reducing the rate, in causing this huge racial wealth gap that we do see, but it's also economic loss for all of us, right? We are literally leaving tons of money on the table. We're leaving money on the table, talent on the sidelines, and capacity untapped. Senator Markey's Spark Act is about stopping that loss. It invests directly in the on-the-ground ecosystem builders, the place-based community-informed institutions that already know how to mobilize our communities into ownership, like guide them into, you know, entrepreneurship success. These are the institutions that can scale support at the speed the current moment right now demands. And it pairs that ecosystem support with capital, with funding, because as ready as you are to be able to jump into becoming an entrepreneur, readiness without funding is just another barrier. We can't afford to leave entire communities unresourced while the economy restructures around them. That's what I want to talk you through today. Over the last several years, I've had the opportunity to work with athlete-led platforms like Drew and Lauren Holiday's Social Impact Fund, community development institutions, corporate partners to support founders in not just Boston, but New Orleans, Kentucky, LA, and so many cities beyond. And what we've learned in that work is this: entrepreneurs do not fail because they lack the talent and the ideas. They fail because the systems around them are not connected. Too often, the support is short term. The programs end just as the entrepreneur is experiencing momentum builds, and the institutions that are here that are doing great work, sometimes we're doing this great work, but we're operating in silos, and the capital arrives too late, or the support arrives too late or not at all for these entrepreneurs. So the gap between this readiness and access is where our businesses are dying. But when you resource the institutions that are rooted in community and culture, institutions that understand local context, that build long-term relationships with the businesses in the community, that coordinate across sectors, entrepreneurs truly succeed. They don't just survive, they succeed. They raise capital, they hire, they scale, and the wealth they create, it stays in the community, right? And that's what ecosystem building looks like when it's done right. The Spark Act matters because it reflects what actually works, which I love that. Like it's taken in a lot of input and insights from folks who are doing great work already. It recognizes that ecosystems are not short-term pilots. They require time, trust, and multi-year commitment. It prioritizes collaboration between accelerators, lenders, educational institutions, government, philanthropy, conscious consumers, and local partners. Like it pulls all of this together. And that mirrors how successful ecosystems actually function. And critically, it acknowledges that ecosystem support must be paired with capital funding. That's mission critical. I want to specifically lift up the financing provision in the bill. From experience, I've been ready to start a business. I've started multiple businesses and didn't have the capital, and the funding stalls, and then everything stalls and everything goes out the door. And without capital or funding, that's what happens. You stall the economic growth of a business that can totally grow and survive. Founders can complete every program, they can build the plan, they can get investment ready and still hit a wall because they do not have funding. They don't have collateral, they don't have credit history, they don't have the right relationships, right? To give them the capital to fuel them to the next milestone, to the next step. And that gap, yes, it is causing the racial wealth gap, but it's also causing a huge economic gap in just our global, in our US economy, period. So the financing provision in the Spark Act addresses this by pairing grants and also lower cost loans with trusted ecosystem operators who can get it out to these businesses and get them the fuel they need. This is really important because it treats capital as being catalytic. It unlocks momentum. It covers the gap between idea and traction. And this is what's needed. This is what our entrepreneurs need to be able to sustain. And the success of this provision will depend on thoughtful implementation, but its inclusion materially strengthens the bill by addressing a barrier entrepreneurs face every single day. So I want to be really, really clear of what's at stake. The economy is restructuring. Automation, you have AI, you have industry consolidation, you have traditional employment pathways are disappearing faster than we're creating new ones. Entrepreneurship is not only like just for those who have innovative ideas, it's not only a side option anymore, it's going to be how many of us are going to survive. That's it. Entrepreneurship is going to be the future. So, and we're not ready. We don't have the support systems ready to support the amount of entrepreneurs that are here right now and that want the entrepreneurs to come. We're asking entire communities to build without the infrastructure to succeed. So the Spark Act doesn't attempt to impose like a top-down solution. It invests in the institutions that are we already know how to do this work. And it scales what is already working. This isn't aspirational, this is economically necessary. If we want an economy that actually works, that doesn't leave entire demographics on the sidelines while industries restructure around them, we have to resource the institutions that can mobilize all communities into ownership, not just some communities. We're leaving too much money on the table with the current way that we're doing this work. The Spark Act is about stopping that loss and building the infrastructure this moment demands. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to testify and to support this and endorse this act. And I love the work that you all have done, and thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And great work. And thank you for your help in putting this together today, Renee. Absolutely indispensable. And I'm just going to lay out for you what the vision is in the Spark Act, because not just Renee, but the other witnesses are now going to go into the sub details of how then all of this would work. And so the Spark Act will create two programs, the Spark program and the Spark financing program. Eligible organizations, which may include nonprofits, community development finance institutions, CDFIs, which we will hear from, minority depository institutions, lenders participating in small business administration programs, HBCUs, MSIs, and community colleges can apply for both or one of these two programs. The Spark program, let me go through that first. The Spark program. Eligible organizations can apply to receive a minimum of $500,000 annually for an initial term of 5 years. So it's a minimum of $2.5 million over 5 years to establish or expand accelerator or incubator services for underserved small businesses. And this funding would be used for administrative, staffing, and other infrastructure needs associated with funding accelerator or incubator programs. Nicole, right? She does this. The second program, the Spark financing program. Eligible organizations can apply to receive either up to $1 million annually if they also receive funding under the Spark program, and up to $500,000 annually if they don't receive funding under the Spark program. This funding would be used to provide financing directly to underserved small businesses. Organizations that receive this funding can either provide grants of up to $20,000 or subsidize loans directly to underserved small businesses. So that's kind of the core idea, that it's institutionalized, it's there, we have professional organizations, and then we have the businesses that know where they can go to in the community in order to get the funding which they would need. So that's the concept, which I've built into the legislation, and I think it fits exactly what Boston is already trying to unleash. So we're next going to hear from Keith Mahoney, who is the Vice President for Communications and Public Affairs at the Boston Foundation, one of the nation's first and most impactful community foundations that aims to advance economic justice and equity in Massachusetts. And Mr. Mahoney manages the foundation's research and public policy initiatives. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Markey, for convening this field hearing and for your longstanding leadership on economic justice and opportunity. We're especially grateful for your work on the Spark Act, which will make a real difference for thousands of Massachusetts small businesses. As you said, my name is Keith Mahoney. I'm a vice president at the Boston Foundation, a 111-year-old public charity with a simple but enduring mission: to improve lives and strengthen communities. Philanthropy can often take risks and make investments that government is unable or unwilling to do. Hopefully, the work we have done here in Boston will demonstrate the wisdom behind the Spark Act. In 2020, as COVID laid bare deep racial inequities, and as the country reckoned with the murder of George Floyd, some hard data cut through the noise. A U.S. Department of Commerce report showed that businesses owned by people of color were denied loans at twice the rate of white-owned businesses. And when loans were approved, the interest rates were, on average, 22% higher. These disparities weren't new, but seeing them documented so clearly prompted many financial institutions to make public comments to support businesses of color. Too many of those commitments did not last. As political climates change, too often resolve changes with them. And that's a problem because the small business community in Massachusetts is becoming more diverse every year. New businesses are far more likely to be Black-owned, Latino-owned, or woman-owned than older ones. If we are serious about growing our economy, we cannot afford to ignore that reality. For community foundations like ours, that is precisely when the responsibility becomes clearest. At the Boston Foundation, we believe that equity work must be durable, not fashionable. That belief is why we launched the Business Equity Fund in 2018, well before the 2020 national reckoning. The goal of the fund is straightforward: to help established businesses of color grow, create jobs, build wealth, and strengthen their communities. The fund provides patient, flexible, low-cost capital to businesses that are already performing, but are too often locked out of traditional financing. Here's what that's looked like so far. 7 businesses have received $2.3 million in loans. The fund has attracted nearly $6 million in additional investment, bringing total capitalization to $8.8 million. Early leadership funding came from Eastern Bank, alongside significant support from the foundation. And the Business Equity Fund doesn't operate in isolation. It's part of a broader ecosystem that recognizes a simple truth: capital alone is not enough. That ecosystem includes the Business Equity Initiative, which provides grants to organizations offering technical assistance, professional networks, and industry-specific expertise, and the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Pace Setters Initiative, which encourages major employers to direct more procurement dollars to businesses of color. It's this coordination, capital, technical assistance, and market access that makes the work effective and scalable. At a moment when we talk, rightly, about trillions of dollars in national investment, the Business Equity Fund offers a lesson in how smaller, targeted interventions can deliver outsized returns when they are trusted, locally rooted, and built for the long haul. Let me give you one example. Outcast Electrical Contractors, a growing Black-owned firm based in Dorchester, was at a crossroads in 2024. The company employed 60 local union workers when its financial partners abruptly closed its line of credit, leaving bankruptcy as the only apparent option. LEAF, the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund, and a Boston Foundation grantee stepped in, helping Outcast navigate out of bankruptcy, stabilize operations, and build a more secure future. This is only one story among many: innovative companies in overlooked communities that can now not only survive, but grow and thrive. Senator Markey, if we're serious about closing the racial wealth gap and strengthening the Commonwealth's economy from the ground up, we must invest in models that endure political shifts, center lived experience, treat equity as a permanent commitment, not a temporary response. That's why we're so excited about the Spark Act. It reflects common sense policy that extends a lifeline to small businesses and strengthens our economy. Patient, equitable capital can work. We have shown that locally. The Spark Act will bring that to scale. The Boston Foundation stands ready to continue this work and to partner with leaders who understand that economic justice is not optional infrastructure. It's essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Next, we're going to hear from Nicole Obie. Nicole is the president of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. BECMA is a nonprofit organization that builds Black wealth across Massachusetts by supporting and empowering businesses and removing barriers to opportunity and prosperity for the community. Ms. Obie is an entrepreneur and serves on the Governor's Advisory Council on Black Empowerment. Congresswoman Presley and I and Senator Warren, we were able to give $1 million to BECMA a couple of years ago to help with their structure. We were able to add $700,000 this year to further augment that work which you do inside of the community. Your organization is kind of a beacon for Black entrepreneurship, and we thank you so much. So whenever you're comfortable, please begin.
Thank you, Ranking Member Markey, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And thank you for your leadership on behalf of America's small businesses. BECMA, we are a statewide member-based nonprofit focused on closing the racial wealth gap by helping Black-owned businesses, 700 to date in the last 4 years. We help them to start, grow, and scale, and by strengthening the economic ecosystem that supports them. And I appreciate the committee's focus on uplifting minority entrepreneurs because, as we've heard, the challenges they face today are not abstract. They are structural, compounding, and increasingly shaped by federal policy decisions. Black and minority entrepreneurs are more likely to start businesses, yet less likely to access adequate affordable capital, professional support, or growth stage opportunities. Even the profitable firms are denied financing at higher rates. And when support does exist, it's often short-term, fragmented, or disconnected from the places where entrepreneurs actually operate. At the same time, these long-standing barriers are colliding with new pressures. Tariffs and supply chain disruptions have raised the cost of goods and materials. And inclusive procurement pathways are narrowing as agencies and private and public companies pull back amid legal and political uncertainty. Immigration enforcement actions, even when not directed at a specific business, are destabilizing local labor markets and reducing foot traffics in entire neighborhoods. So fear alone has economic consequences. For Black-owned businesses, which are more likely to operate with thinner margins and less access to flexible capital, these pressures don't just slow growth. They force businesses to freeze hiring, reduce hours, delay expansion, or exit the market altogether. And this is not anecdotal. It's a predictable pattern we are seeing playing out across many sectors. And that's why the Spark Act is so important and why its timing matters. What distinguishes Senator Markey's Spark Act is that it does not treat entrepreneurs as isolated actors who simply need more advice or resilience. It recognizes that successful businesses grow with strong local ecosystems and that those ecosystems require sustained investment. The Spark Act invests in incubators, accelerators, and community-based lenders that provide trust, on-the-ground support in underserved communities. And just as importantly, it pairs technical assistance with flexible financing. That helps to reduce collateral barriers and steers entrepreneurs away from predatory alternatives. And this combination is critical. From our experience at BECMA, this integrated approach is what actually changes outcomes. When entrepreneurs receive coordinated support, business advice, access to capital, and pathways into procurement and job creation, businesses last longer, they hire locally, and create wealth that circulates within their communities. So the Spark Act also gets accountability right by requiring reporting on capital access, job creation, wages, and participation by race and geography. It ensures that public dollars are tied to real economic outcomes, not just activity. And at a moment when data transparency is eroding, this commitment matters. In Massachusetts, we've seen how fragile progress becomes when ecosystem funding is short-term or disconnected from local realities. The Spark Act offers a durable national framework that scales what works while allowing communities to tailor solutions to their unique challenges. Senator Markey's leadership on this legislation sent a clear message. Minority entrepreneurs are not a niche concern. They are central to America's economic resilience. And when Black and other underserved entrepreneurs succeed, families stabilize, wealth is created, and regional economies grow stronger. So on behalf of BACMA and the entrepreneurs, we have one here, and the communities we represent, I urge this committee to advance the Spark Act and continue investing in policies that make entrepreneurship a viable pathway to stability, growth, and wealth building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. And now we're going to hear, and this is a key piece of testimony here because Kareem Hill represents people who are already doing it right now. He's the president of BDC Community Capital, which is a community development financial institution, or CDFI, an SBA community advantage lender, and an affiliate of the New England Certified Development Corporation, a leading SBA 504 lender in Massachusetts. And Mr. Hill has extensive experience as a lender and was president and the CEO of the New England Business Association. So we welcome you, and whenever you feel comfortable, please begin.
Thank you, Ranking Member Markey, and I want to thank you for all the work you have continued to do. And one thing I'll say about the Ranking Member is 6 years ago when I was running the New England Business Association, you did an interview with me before you actually went for this new term. So I really appreciate the fact that you are always accessible and you find a way to get down to the brass tacks of helping small business owners. So thank you for all the work you have continued to do. And thank you for inviting me back to speak to this for this testimony today. Again, as the senator said, I'm Kareem Hill. I'm the president of BDC Community Capital, and I'm the inaugural president. What that means is we actually started this program. I started this program in 2021. I was fortunate enough to get an investment from BDC Capital, which is the larger organization, of $500,000 in equity and a line of credit of $5 million to lend out to minority business owners. Once I received that, my job was to then go and find a way to make us U.S. Treasury certified, which is not an easy thing to do, right? It took us almost 2 years to go through all the steps to be U.S. Treasury certified. And then once we accomplished that in 2022, we started making our first loans. Now, as I said, we had a $5 million line of credit. I have my own separate board. We're a 501c3. And within the first year, we exhausted that $5 million line of credit. So then I had to go back to the banks and ask for more money, which we all know is not fun, right? But as a former banker, I knew the words to say, I knew how to approach them, and we were able to secure a larger line of credit. Today, since 2022, we've made 185 loans and lent out more than $25 million to minority-based small business throughout the New England region. Now, the proudest piece of that is 92% of those loans have fit our target market. What's our target market? Every CDFI has to have a designated target market. Ours are African-American small businesses, Hispanic-owned small businesses, and any small business in a low to moderate income area. 92% of our $25 million has gone to an entity in those target markets. And that's really why we're here. We're here to make sure that access to capital gets down to where it needs to be. So we at BDC Community Capital, we fully support the Spark Act. And I want to read this appropriately because it deserves to be read. The reason we support the Spark Act is because it allows the expansion of our personal efforts to underserved entrepreneurs, and it focuses on spurring economic growth to underserved communities. It encourages collaboration between the SBA and organizations that serve low to moderate income areas and minority and rural communities. This is critical to supporting the local entrepreneurial ecosystem. Fostering and using the rails that already exist is critical. To get something, what happens in a lot of areas, and Boston's no different, we have well-hearted people that have great ideas, great energy, they create something, But when you're not using the rails that already exist, it's hard for it to sustain. Senator, I'm so proud that you're doing this the way you're doing it because you're using the SBA, which already exists. That's important. And you're also using the SBA 504 program, which is critical. For those who don't understand what the SBA 504 program is, it's vital to reducing the racial wealth gap. And here's why. The 50 and the 504 is a primary lender lends out, a bank or credit union lends out 50% loan to value on that project. The 40% is done by a CDC or a CDFI like us. We come in and do the 40%. That leaves a 10% equity slug that the small business owner must provide. We have gone out and created our own SBA 504 down payment program where we will give you up to $100,000 to fulfill that 10% equity piece. That is critical. It's critical because it takes a small business owner who is currently running his or her business very, very well and allows them to truly build to close the racial wealth gap by owning their building. That sustainability is key to minority business owners. We started this 2 years ago. I got the blessing of my board to do it. We had no grant funding to do it. My board just allowed us to go out and do this. We've now made 11 loans for just over $1.1 million. And the best part about it, not a single default, no issues. It's testing and proving the fact that these small business owners know how to run their businesses and they just need a little bit of more support to move forward. This is a critical component, and this SBA and this Spark program will allow us to enhance that with the funds you were talking about, Senator. So we are fully behind you in what you're trying to accomplish, and we're out in front trying to bring access to capital to those who truly need it. Lastly, I want to make sure that everyone understands that this work cannot be done without my peers here. The work that these wonderful people do, they prepare small businesses for us, meaning my group, to actually provide the funding. What happens a lot is we will teach people what to do, but if you can't secure that funding, that knowledge is not going to get you where you need it to be. Other CDFIs like myself, we are here and committed to making sure we get those funds to where they need to be. Senator, we fully support the efforts you're doing with the Spark program. I'm honored to be here and can't wait to answer any questions you may have.
No, thank you. Great question. Great testimony. And again, this question of access to capital is throughout the entire system. So the state of Massachusetts decided 3 years ago to make community college free. So you've got kids who come from, well, the kind of communities that I came from. When I went to Boston College, it was affordable. You could earn the tuition working during the summer. You could take out a small amount of student loans in order to do it. To go to Boston College or Boston University, to go to any of these schools now, it's $90,000 a year. Who has that kind of money in the same streets that kids used to be able to say, I can earn that funding? So free community college has meant here in Roxbury Community College, there's now more students here than there were before the pandemic because they don't have to think about access to capital for their educational opportunities. And there's been a dramatic rise in those students all across the entire community college system, the entry level. And so that's, again, a smart business plan for Massachusetts, which should be replicated across the whole country. You know, we're not just the Bay State, we're the brain state too. We're looking ahead, thinking about the issues that everyone should have to deal with from an economic perspective. And that's what the SMART Act is all about. The Spark Act is intended to deal with that issue when it comes to small businesses, to those entrepreneurs graduating from the school. The data, though, Mr. Mahoney, let's lay out, if you can quickly, what's the data that you developed in terms of the racial wealth gap that has locked minority members out of that entrepreneurial world that then creates generational wealth?
So I think there are a few different data points, Senator. You mentioned earlier the 2015 Color of Wealth study. And that is going to be redone this year. The Federal Reserve Bank of Boston with the Boston Foundation, Barr Foundation, Eastern Bank Foundation, and Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce are supporting that study. And that is, going to look at economic conditions across the state. The number may be different than the one that was burned into the brains of most Bostonians 10 years ago, but it will show that gap continues. The other data point that I think is important is around the major legislation that passed earlier this year, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is not only going to increase the deficit, but it's doing so by extending tax cuts to favor the wealthy and scaling back the social safety net, increasing border and security and defense funding. The analysis from experts across the ideological spectrum, including the CBO, the Yale Budget Lab, Urban Institute, Brookings, all reached the same conclusion. The law will tilt heavily towards the highest income households. According to the CBO, families in the bottom 10% of the income gap lose about $120,000 a year, while those in the top percent gain roughly $13,600. So that is going to exacerbate, not close, the racial wealth gap in the years to come.
And again, you're talking about access to educational, healthcare, food benefits for those families.
Correct. When families that can't afford it are paying more for healthcare, are paying more for housing, are paying more for education, to cover tax cuts for families that, quite frankly, can afford healthcare, education, and the like, and housing, own homes already. That's where that comes in. And the other, home ownership is an important aspect of this because that is a root of what is wealth as opposed to income. Income gaps may close as earnings change, but wealth is what gets passed down from generations. And wealth is what allows someone to start a small business, to afford higher education. When you own your house and you can put the equity in that to helping the next generation purchase their house, that is what has created the wealth gap over time. And that is a result of deliberate policies like redlining, discrimination on home loans, and zoning decisions that were made over decades and decades.
Yeah. And my father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company, and I'm sitting here as a United States Senator, right? So that's what we have to provide for everyone, no matter how they want to use their God-given abilities, that they can kind of dream and become that. But not if you're taking away funding, which is what the big ugly bill did beginning, last July, then people don't have the discretionary capital. They have to pay more in healthcare, more for education, more for food, more for everything. And then that extra 20, 50, 100 grand that they might have put into a business, it's just not there, because they just have to try to survive. So Ms. King, access to opportunities and networks and capital are significant barriers for underserved entrepreneurs looking to start and run their businesses. How do organizations that you run provide an approach in supporting entrepreneurs, and why is this approach even more effective?
So there was a lot of points, really great points that everybody said on
Could you
here.
move the microphone down just a little?
There was a lot of great points that everyone said on here. And I don't know, I'm going to quote the African proverb where many of you probably have heard this, where it's like, it takes a village to raise a child. Have you heard that proverb?
Mm-hmm.
It also takes a village to grow an entrepreneur, to grow a business, right? And the village has to be connected, right? And this is what you're seeing here is the village, right? We're all the village. So when we've built entire systems, when you think around, like, we kind of have like a pre-K to college system for, like, if you want to go to school, this is the flow. But like when it comes to entrepreneurship, we don't really have that flow completely put together and coordinated, right? We have folks who are doing it in the village, who are doing different siloed approaches of it, but we don't have it completely fluid. So when someone starts a business, we tell them, go figure it out, go find the resource, go piece the support together, piece the guidance you need together, even though we already have institutions right here who can collaborate, who can work together to ping pong around folks. And that's what we're saying. What I love about the Spark Act starts to facilitate, like, like, how do you make it even easier for all of us in the village? We already talk to each other. We already circulate and bounce entrepreneurs between each other because we know each other and can text each other and be like, hey, look at the little cocoa bean or look at this business. But now imagine if that got strengthened to the point of where it's like a pre-K to college system, right? It's like strengthened and we have the resources that we need so that we can build that even better. Because as Kareem said, like he needs folks to be prepped before they get to him, right? And also the folks in that prep, they need capital and resourcing, right? Before they can get to him. So the gap is what happens with this gap. And they kind of call this kind of like the valley of death, I think is one of the things you can look it up. In this gap, when we don't have us all talking together and all the whole entire village activated, not just us, but also customers, government, philanthropy, everybody activated around this one entrepreneur and making sure she survives, she's successful to get where she is. So I'm going to give you another example of that. It's when you don't have that, then the entrepreneur fails. But what it looks like when you do have that is that when an entrepreneur comes, they have this product, it has demand already. Then you have like MIT helps them build their technical capacity. Harvard preps them for investor conversations. Suffolk chimes in with legal support. RCC has done stuff with us too to support that entrepreneur. And then you have Drew and Lauren Holiday supporting them with their networks and funding. And Jalen Brown is creating space and also pouring in his funding and opening up his networks. And they don't just operate just during this one specific time. They're staying with them, right? They're part of the family of like, we're going to stay with this entrepreneur to get you through because maybe in about 8 months, you have a problem that you didn't even know was coming. So here it comes. Now you're in this problem. So then MIT comes back in and says, let me create this war room of all of our successful like entrepreneurs who've been through your problem. Like, let them sit with you and get you through the problem. Then you have the barrier in month 8 where it's like, okay, well, Drew is like, let me make a call to like, can we walk you in to get this partnership? This is what it looks like, right? It looks like we all have to be all hands on deck for these businesses in our communities who need us, not just as customers, but they need us to also be the opener for all the next things that they need for them to survive. And there was a couple of data points that were like floated. I think we talked a lot. One thing why it's really important for the businesses in our communities to really thrive is because they're the first ones to pour back into the community. There's a lot of data that shows that, especially as Black and brown business owners, when they reach and sell or get to the point of where they're like on shelves or they're IPOing or whatever it is, they're the first ones to turn back into an angel investor and double down and invest in the next business. They're the first ones to give to the different solutions that need help on the ground in their community. So if we don't support them, then the community, that's another gap you see of like the person who knows exactly what the community needs can't come back and resource their community that they love. So it's really important around that. One other data point I wanted to add in, and I was trying to find this to pull it. I think sometimes when we speak about this and like we speak about this as like our Black businesses, our brown businesses, they don't get access to capital, right? They don't get access to all these resources. We gave you all that data. The other side of it, for you to intentionally not give the capital to Black and brown businesses is wild, because what other data point to know is that Black businesses, with that little bit of resourcing that you give, they're shown to produce more revenue than other businesses who are well-resourced. That's what the data shows. There's been CFIs that we've spoken to where they'll tell us, you know who doesn't default on the loan? Black businesses. And we're not giving them loans? Why? Like, you're intentionally blocking the economy. You're intentionally saying like, this is what you're doing. So this village, this is what we do. One of the things we were very intentional with Drew, Lauren, and Jalen was like, we already knew there were folks right here in Boston intentionally building, from like governors, mayors, Nicole, everybody was already building. So it wasn't for us to duplicate it. It was to come in and say, well, where do we fit in? How do we like ping pong things together, and let's flow this together. And then like now let's also invite the community and the customers in too, so that we have this beautiful wrapped around village around the entrepreneur. And that's when you're going to see more success, where we're like hands-on. Everybody, it's like you have to treat them like family, and we all have to be coordinated around this, because if wherever you want to live, you want to see it thrive and grow, it depends on this. It depends on those businesses who are creating innovations to live right in your communities.
Fabulous. Thank you. So Nicole Obi, how do you interact with organizations like Boston Exchange and BDC Capital? What is the role that you play?
Our role is, while we focus on Black entrepreneurs, and as I mentioned, we've touched 700 of them directly, we also partner with other organizations that are also supporting small businesses. I often say that not all small businesses are Black and brown, but almost all Black and brown businesses are small. And so we partner, it's the same challenges that we often face. So we partner with Latino, Asian, and LGBT communities as well. And we find that to be really important. I would say that last year we did a study of our member base, and we found that 70% of the survey respondents said that we were the only source of support that they received. And so a lot of times those are our earliest stage businesses, or those that just haven't gotten any support quite yet. And so they are sort of the tip of the spear, the top of the funnel. And what we're really trying to do in partnership with others, including the folks here, is move people through different stage gates. While we do provide grants, because that's a great way to start for those businesses that are trying to get through those initial milestones, we too have offered loans. And like Karim and like Renee just said, we've done 10 loans for a total of $850,000, and all of those loans are current or have been repaid. Those are very safe bets. And that's what we're really trying to make sure that traditional lenders understand. A success to us is being able to spin those businesses out to traditional lenders and other CDFIs. And so we've been able to accomplish that. Something else that we work on, and especially in partnership with others. So as Karim sits on a board that I chair for the state around procurement. We know that grants are not going to sustain businesses indefinitely, but they are a great start. But it's really procurement that we think is an important next step in helping our businesses get and sustain themselves. And what we've found just in BECMO over the last few years, that it usually takes a couple of deals for our businesses to be able to sustain themselves at this new level. So we really look to try to get them to that third deal mark. But in the meantime, there's more support that we get from our partners, whether it's capital or professional services or advice. And so there's a lot of ways that we are connected to each other. We happen to see a lot of the businesses maybe earlier stage, but to us, success is being able to have them advance and get support from others and having them take it to the next level.
Fabulous. And Mr. Hill, we're going to give you the last word here. Bring it all together for us. 504, Community Advantage Program, everything that you see here in terms of how it could all funnel into you, out into the economy, businesses opening.
Yeah. So a lot of acronyms when you talk about the SBA, right? So you've got 504, you've got Community Advantage. So how do those programs fit into the ecosystem of getting access to capital to minority-owned businesses? Well, here, I'll give you one from each category. The Community Advantage Program, the reason it's so important is that it allows a lender like me to make a loan to a company that's under 2 years in existence. Very few banks, if any, will do a loan for a business that's under 2 years in existence. The only way they will do it is if you have an exorbitantly high net worth, because they're really not banking on the business. They're banking on you, right? So if you don't have a high net worth and your business is under 2 years in existence, there's really no place for you to go for financing except to a lender that has a Community Advantage tag. Now, what would we do with the Spark funds with that Community Advantage? How does that help? We can take Community Advantage money. We can take a Spark line of $1 million that Senator Markey was talking about and leverage that 5 times. So $1 million can turn into $5 million in lending that goes out in Community Advantage. Why? Because the SBA guarantees us 75% on every Community Advantage loan. So it allows us to leverage those dollars in a way that has true impact. So that's the first way on Community Advantage. The SBA 504. As I said earlier, with our down payment program, we can take $1 million of Spark funding and leverage that 5 times when it comes to that. So it allows us then to go out and reach, to put $5 million out on the street, Divide that by 100,000. That's a lot of loans you can do. That's a lot of loans that can be put out to individuals who could not receive that. Here's the one data point I'll give you on the 504 piece. Here's why it's important. 504 money it's fixed. It's a fixed rate for 25 years. If you run your business today, I can guarantee you one thing: your rent will not be the same for 25 years. I can guarantee that. If you do a 504 loan, your rent will be the same for 25 years. That's how it allows that business owner to grow. It allows them not only to have the asset, but it gives them certainty on expense side. Certainty is critical when you're running your own business. So that's how these programs, Senator Markey, can really help and really drive this racial wealth gap that we talk about so often.
You're great. Thank you so much. Thanks to this incredible panel. Can we just give them a warm, thanks for their incredible work. We're at the center of kind of the economic revolution right here. I was able to put in $4 million for Roxbury Community College a couple of years ago, and they're renovating the Dudley House, which is right next door, which is going to become the center for economic and social justice. And we were just able to put in $2 million into the federal budget for Roxbury Community College for internships to learn and earn. So we're seeding those programs right here at the school. And with this expert panel, we can see that these really, really smart, ambitious young people walking the corridors looking in are all wanting to maximize their God-given abilities. So that's what this is going to be all about. This has been an incredible hearing today. I'm taking all of this back to Washington. My goal is to build a more equitable future for everyone, to ensure that Black and Brown communities are fully integrated into our economy. For anyone who is watching or would like to submit testimony, you have 14 days to submit testimony. It will be included in the congressional record, okay, so that we will have all of your testimony to help us to develop this program in a way that beginning next January will begin to really augment all of the funding that should be available for young Black and Brown entrepreneurs in our country. With that, thank you all for being here, and this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.